In this website, popular amongst Muslims, it states the religion of Islam was the sole reason for Muslims being able to conquer the Persian Empire. Also, it hails Muslims for being liberators and ending their oppression. Quote unquote, before the Islamic conquest, Iran was under the rule of the Sassanids and suffered from a great deal of injustice, corruption, and oppression. Zoroastrianism was the official religion of Iran until the Islamic conquest. It then goes on to talk about the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah. The full link is below. Indeed, the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah was significant as it marked a turning point in history, but the idea that Islam was solely responsible is a formless and uncalibrated argument. To engage meaningfully in a discussion on this subject, and in order to separate fact from conjecture, the whole context needs to be understood and the sequence of events prior to and after Islam. At the time of Islam's arrival, the Persian Sassanid Empire was exhausted of its resources economically and militaristically due to fighting the Roman Byzantine Empire for centuries. The empire was also suffering from an internal political turmoil which led to the assassination of Khosrow II by his own son. Another factor was the empire was hit by a devastating plague called the Plague of Shiro, which takes its name from Kavad II, whose birth name was Shiro, who succeeded his father after assassinating him. The plague was an epidemic so devastating it killed half of its population. So even if the Muslims had not invaded, the empire was already falling apart. Other contributing factors were the Lakhmid dynasty's authority extended over to their Arab allies in Al-Bahrain and Al-Yamama. They were once Persian allies, but when Khosrow II deposed and executed An-Nu'man III, the last Lakhmid ruler, the buffer state of the Lakhmids vanished. This ultimately facilitated the later Muslim caliph's invasion within a few years after Khosrow's death, for the reason that An-Nu'man's Arab allies rose in arms and defeated the Persians at the Battle of Dhukar, which led to them losing their control over eastern Arabia. The victory at Dhukar roused confidence and enthusiasm among the Arabs in general, which was seen as the beginning of a new era for them, especially with the rise of Islam, an ideology that touted itself as the unifier of all Arabs. What the aforementioned means is that the pre-Islamic Lakhmids and its annexation was one of the main factors behind the fall of the Persian Empire, as it was the catalyst by which the subsequent Islamic conquest of Persia was facilitated. Though they were previously allies, after its fallout with Persia, the Lakhmids agreed to act as spies for the Muslims, which ultimately led to their defeat at the Battle of Hira by the Rashidun Caliphate in 633. A map showing the battle is here. Consequently, the Islamic conquest of Persia occurred when the Persian Empire was severely weakened by long wars with the Byzantine Empire, internal civil strife, economic decline, ruined trade routes, political instability, and compounded by devastating plagues. All this created an opportune moment for the nascent Islamic Caliphate to launch a full-scale invasion culminating in the decisive Battle of Nahawand in 642, which effectively ended the Persian Empire. It says in At-Tabari, the Muslims referred to the event as the victory of victories. In the book Arabs and Empires Before Islam, in chapter 5, it says before Islam, the Arabs would carry out raids on Roman and Persian territories. On page 219, it says the Arabs would attack the Romans. And on page 224, sometimes the Arabs allied with the Romans attacked the Persians. So the weakening of Persia was over many incremental accretional years. It was not a sudden or unilateral effort on the part of the Arab Muslims, as it occurred as a culmination of many years of attacking the empire pre and post-Islam. The entire book, in parts and chapters, is dedicated to talking about the Arabs' roles as proxies by the Byzantine Roman Empire and the Persian Sassanid empires, who would pay the Arabs to fight on their behalf. Thus the Arabs were not an obscure group of people who only became significant after Islam. They were well seasoned in fighting and had a great amount of economic and military resources. More information is covered in this source. Further evidence that Arabs have been in conflict with Rome and Persia long before the arrival of Islam is shown in this research. Sometimes they were allied with one of the superpowers over the other, even if that put them in conflict with other Arabs. After Islam, the Arab tribes united under Islam after the unification of Arabia. Since the Arabs could no longer fight each other, they invaded nearby territories. Another factor is the Persians, like their Byzantine Roman counterparts, were trained for conventional warfare, massive standing armies, and their proxies fighting one another. In contrast, the Arab armies were rather light and tiny by comparison. What they lacked in terms of equipment, they made up for it in speed and ability to change their battle formations impetuously. What also helped them was that the commanders had experience on how to adapt around conventional strategies. In this paper by Harvard University, it mentions how the Islamic Empire took advantage of the decline of the Byzantine and Persian empires, and how the conquered people soon became Muslims. Rather curiously, the paper says Islam was not forced on the people. This is a misnomer. The conquered people, according to the teachings of Islam, were given only three choices. Number one, to convert to Islam. Number two, to pay the tribute, but only if they are Jews or Christians. It's an act of humiliation, as they are to live as second-class citizens. Other religious groups were generally not given this option. And number three, to fight. These are pretty oppressive choices. The people were not given the freedom to choose. Certainly not the libertarian options one would expect from a tolerant religion. Nonetheless, Islam integrated, assimilated, and morphed around others' cultures that it benefited from. It was hugely influenced by their societal, educational, and technological advancements, especially of the Byzantine Christian Rome and Sasanian Zoroastrian Persia. Some of this has already been evidenced, but will be shown in future videos, although it is highlighted in the book Islam, the Honest Truth. Here is a map illustrating the rise and expansion of early Islam, from the time of Muhammad until the 9th century. Notice the gradual expansion from the time of Muhammad and then the exponential growth from around the time of the Abbasid Caliphate. There were, at various points, rival Muslim groups and caliphates vying for power and killing one another. So the idea of a monolithic Islamic empire does not tell the whole story. So in conclusion, the Islamic conquest of Persia occurred during periods of upheavals when the Persian Empire was severely weakened by long wars with the Roman Byzantine Empire, exacerbated by internal civil strife, economic decline, ruined trade routes, political instability, not least the devastating plagues wiping out a significant section of its population. This created an opportune moment for the Islamic Caliphate to launch a full-scale invasion, culminating in decisive battles, effectively ending the empire once and for all. To judge whether the new Islamic empire was an improvement over the previous Persian one is one for historians and people to judge. But the Persian Empire gave the world many firsts, from its famed university and academic medical center to standardized currency, from postal service to a universal constitution, and much more. Some of these topics were covered in a previous video and will be covered in future videos. Islamic rulers simply assimilated and incorporated aspects of this and the other civilizations they conquered, effectively wiping out any previous traces, thus whitewashing history in their favor. As the old saying goes, history is written by the victors. This statement underscores the notion that when apparently solid verities are questioned, it can seem as if history itself cannot be trusted. The truth is, the search for real history requires one to search for reliable knowledge. This itself can be a long, illimitable, arduous, and a difficult process where none has reached its end yet.